The Chargers made a very rare move on Tuesday using an unrestricted free agent tender on running back J.K. Dobbins, but does that mean he'll be back with the squad in 2025?
You are Locked On Chargers, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Chargers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, and welcome into the Locked On Chargers podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Wade, joined as always by my co-host, David Drogemeyer, and we've been covering the Chargers now for 9 seasons together, but this is our 7th year as the host of the Locked On Chargers podcast, bringing you your team every day. Thank you to the everydayers out there, as always, for making us your first listen. To make sure you never miss the show, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and listen wherever you get your podcast from. David, what do we got today?
Daniel, this one was a bit of a surprise for me. I didn't even know that this existed, but Joe Hortiz loves his comp picks, and he was going to find a way to be able to produce one, and this one came from J.K. Dobbins. And then we're going to take a look at some of the undrafted free agents. We know that a lot of people out there are very excited about Rocket Sanders, but you should also be excited about a psycho fullback that is going to be joining him on the UDFA list, trying to crack this 53-man roster. And, of course, the great Antonio Gates was an undrafted free agent, a former basketball player. Well, seems like another former basketball player is trying to take that pathway to the NFL.
And man, how cool would that be if the Chargers could strike, gold twice doing something like that with a player who did not play collegiate football. But today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $250 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. David, we're starting with news today that, like you said, I was unaware that this was a thing. I mean, I saw Elijah Moore got this the other day from the Cleveland Browns, and then today it comes out. Per Adam Schefter, the Chargers applied the unrestricted free agent tender to running back J.K. Dobbins, who remains eligible to sign with any team. Dobbins now will still count against the compensatory formula if he signs with another team before training camp opens in July, but the Chargers will retain his exclusive negotiating rights if he doesn't. I didn't know this existed either. I thought basically once you made it to unrestricted free agency, there really wasn't anything that you could do outside of franchise tagging a player. This is something that seemingly only would come after the draft, where usually a free agent is just a free agent and teams can sign any player without it having an impact on if they're going to get a compensatory pick the next year. Not so fast, because David, we've talked so many times about Joe Hortiz and him lifting every stone, checking in every corner of the world to try to find an advantage, whether it's an international pathway player, whether it's Jimmy Bell coming in from college basketball, or using this kind of tender on a free agent. And I mean, it is something where I don't think we see this with the prior regime, finding literally any kind of way to potentially have a J.K. Dobbins signing after the draft, potentially give them a comp pick.
Yeah, I was flabbergasted at this. I mean, I guess unrestricted doesn't mean unrestricted completely, because with this tender, I mean, the Chargers have a lot, or almost putting a lot of restrictions on J.K. Dobbins with this, because, if he gets signed by another team, they or even have the prospects of being signed by another team, there's a comp pick that's directly tied to that deal. So that is going to make some teams think maybe 2 or 3 times before they want to make a move. And it almost feels like an injury might have to necessitate this type of deal so that it kind of nullifies the effect of potentially losing out on a comp pick. Man, this is a very interesting situation.
Alex Katzen, who's a great follow for Chargers Twitter out there, I think really broke it down easily when he said, "This means if Dobbins signs with a new team before training camp, the Chargers are still able to get a comp pick for him. If Dobbins doesn't sign with a new team by training camp, LA is the only team allowed to sign him for the rest of the season." So the Chargers, as far as, I don't think they're going to re-sign him. Let me just say that. When I saw this, I thought, okay, well, what does this mean? Does this mean they're likely to sign him? I don't necessarily think that's the case. I don't think this means a potential reunion with J.K. Dobbins is coming down the road. It also seems kind of messed up a little bit, right? I mean, just because basically what this is another team, like David said, if they wanted to sign J.K. Dobbins, it could affect whether they're going to get a comp pick in 2026 or not. The Chargers are right on the threshold. Right now, they don't have any comp picks, which we're going to talk about. this potentially gets them a late one if he signs elsewhere, but it also makes it less likely that he can sign elsewhere. It also makes it so he can't wait to see if somebody gets injured in training camp and take that spot. Because if training camp comes and he is unsigned at that point, he can only sign with the Chargers. And it doesn't mean the Chargers have to sign him. If they did sign him, the tender is a little over $3 million. It's 110% of what he made last season. And I like, exploring every avenue, to try to help the team and gain any advantage that you possibly can. At the same time, man, it does make me feel a little bit bad for J.K. Dobbins, because it's like he had such a great season last year, and especially to average, 4.6 yards per carry and get 900 yards in 13 games behind that offensive line that no one else on the team could run behind. I think it says a lot. And I mean, I think there's an argument out there that J.K. Dobbins with Marion Hampton would have been maybe even a better pairing skill set wise than Najee Harris is. So it just sucks to see someone who came in, bet on themselves, had a great season, and now could kind of get screwed over by this.
Yeah, it is. I mean, this is a kind of a situation that is a little uncomfortable, honestly, just because J.K. Dobbins is a really good dude by all accounts. Yeah. I mean, came in with a great attitude, has overcome just unbelievable amounts of adversity with the very serious injuries that he has had to get through rehab and get back on the field, right? And so for him to, not even be able to get an opportunity to see if an injury happens in training camp, for him to, step in to be the guy, that, seems like it's just not really fair. I mean, it's not really fair to him, because like, that's really what he's looking for. I mean, at this point in time, let's be realistic, right? I mean, it's going to probably take an injury for somebody to want to sign him, which also, I don't understand why he remains unsigned. It's not like he wasn't productive last year. I mean, he was. He had several runs that he was breaking off and scoring and winning football games for the Chargers last year. I mean, that's the thing. Is there something with the medicals that are not checking out? Because it's definitely not the character, and it's not the on the field skill, because J.K. Dobbins absolutely has that. So this is a very unique situation, and obviously time will tell how this unfolds, but this is something that we're going to have to continue to monitor as we get to training camp.
Yeah, you want all the advantages you could get, but you have to wonder how that kind of would affect potential free agents trying to sign on the cheaper. It's like, well, hey, they could slap this on me next year, even if I have a really good year. Now, any team could sign them that maybe didn't get a running back in the draft as early as they wanted to, right? And maybe he would have had some interest, and maybe he will. And hopefully he'll go sign somewhere. And if the Chargers really want him on the team, they'll be able to match whatever that offer is. Yep. And he'll get on a team. I still think he's good enough to where somebody still and maybe should take a chance on him. Definitely should. I mean, you're not going to tell me there's, 64 better running backs than J.K. Dobbins in the NFL. It would just be wrong. So you can't tell me he can't be a backup somewhere, that he can't bring value to some other team. But I think this is in part because the Chargers right now are projected to have 0 comp picks in 2026. And basically what it boils down to is the signings of Najee Harris, Mekhi Becton, and Dante Jackson cancel out what Poona Ford, Josh Palmer, and Christian Fulton would have given them in comp picks. Even though the money isn't equal out to each other, the people who left signed for more than what the Chargers brought the other guys in for. But that's not how it works. You're either a compensatory free agent or you're not. If you make enough money, if you sign a big enough deal, basically in this class over $3 million, you count against that formula. So right now the Chargers aren't going to get a comp pick. Maybe they will for J.K. Dobbins if he signs somewhere. But David, after all the ones they had this year, getting those 3 compensatory picks this year was so awesome to see. But it looks like next year they'll just have to be going with, the 7 picks that they still have.
Yeah, and with Joe Hortiz, I think through 2 drafts, I think there's a lot of confidence that we have in him and the front office to be able to go out there and make good selections. Seems like they did a really good job of filling holes. In this draft, we already know that he, was able to grab 4 impact players in his first draft in limited time. But yeah, he's not going to have that extra trade ammunition with the 4 comp picks that he had this year. So he's going to have to get creative. And it seems like this was one of those ways that he was going to get creative.
And I think when you just have the turnover that the Chargers have had, and last year basically everyone was under that threshold because they were basically all 1 year, almost minimum deals that they had to sign these guys to. And you had guys like Kenneth Murray going and signing crazy deals. But right now, the Chargers have no projected compensatory picks in 2026, which could change if J.K. Dobbins gets signed. But more than likely, they're not going to have one in the next cycle, and they'll have to be targeting 27 to 2027 if they want to get that cycle going again. But we still have more to get into, including talking about a little bit of talking about some of these undrafted free agents. We haven't talked about them yet, but there's one that feels like he's kind of head and shoulders above the others and a chance to make this roster. And of course, we're talking about the Rocket and much more on today's Locked On Chargers podcast. The NBA playoffs are almost here, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. I love how FanDuel makes it super easy, whether it's picking my favorite team or diving into player props, from three-pointers to steals to assists. FanDuel has so many ways to bet on your favorite player props. Plus, once the game tips off, you can even combine your live prop bets into a same-game parlay for a chance to win big. Huge game tonight. Lakers and Timberwolves. The Lakers fighting for their lives, and they are 5.5-point favorites and minus 235 to win outright. But we love the player props, and you can go with Luka in a must-win game to score 30-plus points, which feels like a given at minus 180. And if you wanted to go bigger, you go with LeBron after going scoreless in that last fourth quarter on a vengeance trail, and him getting 30-plus at plus 200. So don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today. All right, David, let's talk about some of the undrafted free agents. We're not going to be able to have time in a 30-minute show to be able to talk about every one of these guys in depth, but we kind of wanted to just give our thoughts on our initial thoughts on this undrafted free agent class, because the Chargers obviously have a long history of guys making the roster and having the eye to be able to find guys in undrafted free agency that can actually make an impact for you and make the roster, right, and do something along those lines that just seems really, really rare, but the Chargers have had incredible luck with it. And one I've seen Chargers fans freaking out about already, the one guy I've seen the most from this undrafted free agent class as far as the hype train goes, is a man named Raheim Rocket Sanders. And I'm first of all, when you just give me that name, I'm automatically going to want this guy to make the team. I mean, if your nickname is Rocket, A+ nickname. But it's also someone, David, that Dane Brugler had as a 6th or 7th round pick. As far as his grading scale, he was 217 on the consensus big board, which would have been a 7th round pick. This is a guy that I think fell through the cracks a little bit in a very loaded running back class that is someone to keep an eye on as we get into training camp and are looking at these undrafted free agents.
Yeah, and he clearly kind of fits the mold of what the size profile that the Chargers want from their running backs. Kind of 6 foot plus, 215, 220 pounds. That's what Raheim Rocket Sanders is in the kind of body type that he brings to the table. And, this is a guy who has had some, pretty decent production in college, especially in 2022, where he racked up over 1,400 yards rushing and had 10 rushing touchdowns that season. Like, that's big time production. And in the SEC, in one of those power conferences. And if one of the things that the Chargers have shown us throughout the first 2 drafts of this new regime is that they definitely covet and put a lot of stock in premium competition at the college level. So that is one of the things that he definitely adheres to. He's a very powerful physical runner. He runs, very, very strong in between the tackles. He's a guy that's very difficult to bring down. He does have some speed. I would say he's probably a little bit tight from time to time. His lateral quickness is probably not the best in my opinion from what I was watching, but he definitely has that power and that speed and that burst to be able to bring you something. And like I said, he fits the mold of the running back that the Chargers like.
Yeah, he definitely has enough juice to get you a little bit excited about it. And I think when you're looking at that, not just 2022 season, which that was his true sophomore season. If he was able to come out to the draft right after his sophomore season, he probably would have been drafted. I mean, straight up. And I think the hard thing is for him, he had to go back for his junior year and get that 3rd year. And when he did, he got hurt and missed most of the season, has had multiple injuries that have kind of held him back to this point, multiple surgeries on his meniscus, on his labrum. Those are probably the red flags that might have cost him, getting drafted a little bit. Also fumbled 3 times in 2024 and 9 times in his 4-year career. Not great, but I mean, you're talking about a dude, whose basically last 2 healthy seasons were over 2,300 yards, 21 touchdowns, averaging 5.7 yards per carry. Add on another 55 catches for 587 yards, 10.7 yards per catch and 4 touchdowns in those last 2 healthy seasons, 2024 and 2022. So every year you're going to, find one of these guys, and he definitely stood out to us when we looked at this list. It's like, okay, that guy has real-time production in big-time conferences, and also it's a position where it doesn't feel impenetrable, right?
Yeah.
Najee Harris is going to make this team. Omarion Hampton is going to make this team.
Yep.
Kamani Vidal and Hassan Haskins, if I had to guess, I would say they're going to make it. At the same time, I don't think they're unimpeachable either, and it feels like, hey, this guy could be fighting for a spot.
Oh, for sure. I mean, this is one of those parts of the Chargers roster where you look at and you say, maybe this is a spot that somebody can supplant, one of the players that's already there. We know Hassan Haskins has played a lot of special teams. We also know that he's a Jim Harbaugh type guy that, he kind of has played with Jim Harbaugh in the past. So
yeah,
we know there's a connection there. But also Kamani Vidal, after, catching a beautiful touchdown on a wheel route, really didn't do anything else the rest of the season. And, the fact that he was a later round pick means that his spot is not safe at all. And so, there's a big opportunity here if, Mr. Rocket Sanders can prove that he's the better player. And hey, the good thing for him is that the Chargers have an extra preseason game that they are going to have to be able to showcase, what these guys can do, whether it is, them showing the coaches that they can make this roster or, maybe catching on with another NFL team, because obviously that's the ultimate goal here.
Yeah. And I mean, the practice squad's a great thing too.
Yes,
maybe, if he goes ballistic in the preseason, maybe somebody would want to bring him onto their active roster, but not a lot of teams are willing to do that. Even if you have a guy who's impressive in the preseason.
Yeah.
It happens a couple times. The Chargers had one last year that the Raiders picked up right when they cut him, and I'm sure they're wishing that they could get him back on the practice squad. The dude from Notre Dame, Thomas, I can't remember his last name. Thomas Harper, that's who it was.
Yeah.
But to have this dude potentially on your practice squad and have that be kind of, the floor, I think that's awesome. And to have a guy like this who feels like he could have a great preseason, right? It feels like he could be a preseason darling just with the physicality that he plays with. He's going to give us some moments, I think, to get excited about.
Touches,
and for a dude who I, wouldn't have necessarily thought would be, top end speed guy, ran the mid 4.4s, 4.46, right around 4.47, right around what Omarion Hampton ran. So a dude who has some juice, has some physicality to him, a fun player who has some receiving chops. We'll see what happens. But yeah, I mean, I would agree with you. Kamani Vidal, not totally safe. It's only his second year, and they know that they didn't give him the best to work with. But he also didn't do anything that would make him seem like a total lock at this point, especially with this new regime where if it doesn't get going and they don't see it, who knows? And this will be a great year in year two to kind of test that, to see guys they actually drafted, right? Not guys from a previous regime, guys they picked, and how soon they're willing to give up on him, right? But I'm hoping, obviously, the best for Kamani Vidal, and hopefully he just has a great breakout season this year, and he has to get on the field. But also, David, in every undrafted free agent class, it seems like we're going to fall in love with a fullback. And this year, I've already seen all the hype videos. I've seen all the cut-ups, right? Stevo Klotz, another A-plus top-notch name. And I'm going to talk myself into this guy at some point during this offseason for sure.
I mean, Stevo Klotz is really, really fun to watch, man. I mean, this is a throwback type of player, a guy that you could see easily playing, back in the 1960s, 1970s, just, bare knuckle, just drag out, beating the heck out of the person in front of you. This guy wants to knock the stuffing out of the defenders that are in front of him. Like, as a fullback, he's a tight end, 15 catches for 149 yards and 2 touchdowns throughout his entire collegiate career. So this guy is brought in for one reason and one reason only, and that is to decimate the defenders in front of the running backs.
And right now, obviously, Scott Matlock is that fullback they have. And the thing is like, even though he's not the best fullback in the world, he doesn't light the world on fire. From a pure fullback perspective, it seems like somebody could go get that spot. But I think they just freaking love how much he can do,
Sure.
I think they love that he plays a little bit on the defensive line. I think they love that he plays special teams and can also be a gigantic, because they have a size fetish, a gigantic fullback, right? I mean, that is what they love. But I mean, Stevo Klotz, you see the pancakes, you see just the, glass eating, I'm going to sell out my body to make sure that you're not going to make this tackle.
Yeah.
He has those things. He's a much more natural receiver than Scott Matlock is. He has some of those receptions, but he is a fullback, right? He's not really a tight end, even though that's how he's labeled. He's a tight end in the way, Scott Matlock is a tight end sometimes, or even Tucker Fisk, where it's like more of a blocker, but, you might run in a flat route or something. Who knows? But Stevo Klotz, I will talk myself into, just like I did for Ben Mason last year, and I did at one point for a Xander Horvath, or a guy we were talking about beforehand. Who's that guy that we love? Bobby Hawley, who I believe got beat out by Gabe Neighbors, in that season.
Terrible.
But there's always going to be a psychopath fullback that I'm going to fall in love with. So just wait for Stevo Klotz to be that guy. But he's not the best story the Chargers have going, because the Chargers have a player trying to make the team as a tackle, and he's taking the Antonio Gates path, which is a path that is rarely traveled. So we're going to talk about that, and also the hardest positions to make the team as an undrafted free agent, and more on today's Locked On Chargers podcast. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. Your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all of your accounts, investments, and spending all in one place, so you stop just managing your money and you start building your wealth. When I started using Monarch, I realized just how much I was spending on food delivery, and man, when you see it put in front of you, it definitely puts things in perspective. And it also, the great thing is, gives you something to beat. And that's my favorite part about Monarch Money, is since I've done it, I've set goals for myself every month, and I've been able to hit them. And that is a really, really good feeling. And also, I love just the easy collaboration. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever, and you can track your shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off of your first year. All right, David, well, we still have more to get into as far as these undrafted free agents, because just at first look, you're looking at the guys most likely to make it, and you're also looking at some of the cool stories. And this one was one that for the Chargers specifically, it'd be really hard to pass over, considering what their history is and a certain Hall of Famer that they have in their franchise. But thank you, as always, for making us your first listen. If you need a second listen, make sure you check out the new Locked On NFL Scouting Show with Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino. Now that the draft is over, get up to date with everything going on around the league on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts from. Now, David, let's talk about Jimmy Horn Jr., a guy that I had never heard of, but I would have never heard of him for good reason, because he did not play college football.
Jimmy Bell Jr.
Jimmy Bell Jr. What did I say?
Jimmy Horn Jr.
Oh, Jimmy Horn Jr., a different draft prospect. Yeah, my brain, if you can tell, is a little bit fried from all the prospects that we crammed into the last few weeks. But
lots of
Jimmy
them.
Bell Jr., someone that was very interesting to see what the story was, because you can see the name and you see, okay, hey, this dude's 6'9", 330 pounds. He's an offensive tackle. It seems like somebody the Chargers would want. But this from Jordan Schultz, former Mississippi State basketball standout Jimmy Bell Jr. is signing with the Chargers as an offensive tackle. Get this, Bell checks in at 6'9", 330, an absolute monster. David, it's not something you see very often, but if this is the path you want to take, there's one franchise that sticks out as the place you should go try to do it at.
Not only for undrafted free agents, but for former basketball players, of course, as well, as the Chargers probably have the most famous former basketball player turned football player of all time in the soon-to-be enshrined forever Antonio Gates.
Yep.
And obviously we saw how great that worked out. Chargers have a very long, storied history of undrafted free agents being able to, make their way into the NFL. And so we'll have to see. This one is a little bit of a tougher transition here. Obviously from, being a basketball player, being at that size, having that movement skills, having those movement skills, having the quick feet, those things are definitely going to translate. But man, I don't know if there's many other things that are more difficult than having to transition from one sport to another one where you have very, very limited experience.
And basketball is interesting because you've seen people do it. I mean, there's been plenty of basketball players like Jimmy Graham. I mean,
Sure.
Tony Gonzalez, obviously another Hall of Famer who is a basketball player too. But those guys played some college football. It might not have been what they were known for, and they might have also played college basketball, right, too. But, like, this is a guy that's also, like Antonio Gates, did not play a snap of college football, which is crazy. He played college basketball at St. Louis, West Virginia, and then also transferred to Mississippi State, where this last season he spent with their football team. So it's not like he has no experience. He posted videos of him scrimmaging with the team and, taking some pass protection reps and working on what it takes technique-wise. There is some stuff already built up. Obviously, all the physical parts of it check out, right?
Yeah.
Now, you don't see football players go and play in the NBA. College football players don't ever go play in the NBA, and that's been all the rage, right? Which one is easier to transition and which players can do what? Basketball, they're just also huge, right?
Yeah.
So that there's a chance just from your sheer size that someone will give you this opportunity. And Jimmy Bell Jr. is getting that opportunity with the Chargers. So I'm excited to see how it plays out. Probably, depending on, which guy we're talking about, as far as like international pathway players, it's probably a little bit higher than that. But hey, man, if this dude can carve out a practice squad spot for himself, especially with how often practice squads are used, that's something.
Oh, yeah.
And that is something where it's like, hey, maybe they find something in his game that they feel like they can use. But when looking at the undrafted free agents, one of the things that also stood out, David, was just the position that they signed the most of and seeing how many guys they sign at certain positions. And one thing that stood out to me, 4 cornerbacks, David, are on this undrafted free agent list, which maybe we shouldn't be surprised because we know Joe Hortiz loves his cornerbacks.
Yeah, it is a surprise, though, because the Chargers, they signed 2 corners in free agency with Dante Jackson and Benjamin St-Juste. So, to see them, and also, they drafted, a defensive back late, and a corner late in the draft as well. So
yeah,
this is a room that's got a ton of bodies in it. I mean, and to be able to bring in 4 more corners, it's like, okay, well, maybe you just want to see what these guys bring to the table, see if anybody can kind of beat out who you have kind of on the fringe to fill out the back end of that cornerback room.
Yeah, and I think what it really is about is just trying to load up the practice squad as much as they can with as much corner and secondary talent as they can, because obviously we saw last year how many guys, Eli Apple was taking meaningful snaps for this team last year, right? So those guys, you're going to potentially see time. So the 4 guys that they end up getting, out of the 4 of them, the guy that probably has, I guess, the best chance, just based on what he was thought of as a draft prospect, is Oregon's Nico Reed, who was the highest rated out of all these guys in Dane Brugler's top cornerbacks. He's a guy that was still projected to be a free agent and not expected to get drafted, but he was quite a bit higher than the rest of the guys. And I'd say the other one to kind of keep an eye on, Jordan Aladakun, who had 5 interceptions last season for Bowling Green. So definite ball production. Oregon's Nico Reed had some ball production as well, but the other guys that we're talking about are Rutgers' Eric Rogers and also Iowa State's Miles Purchase. So
great name.
These guys, yeah, Miles, there's just really a ton of great names on this. But right now you're looking at a room that already has Cam Hart, Tarheeb Still, Dante Jackson, Benjamin St-Juste, Dean Leonard, Ja Taylor, and Triquez Bridges, who they just drafted, spent his 7th round, 256 overall pick, but still, that's a lot of bodies. I would be surprised if Jasir Taylor is on this team in 2025 if he makes this roster. Maybe one of these guys has a chance to take that Triquez Bridges job, right? Because he was picked 256, and we'll talk about tomorrow in our draft grades what grade we would give that and just how we feel about Triquez Bridges specifically. But that what I thought was interesting. There's some guys there that have some, real production, even if they weren't good enough or, thought highly enough to get drafted. So we'll see if the Chargers can find a diamond in the rough there. But there's one position, David, the Chargers only signed 1 player at, and I think it's probably because that room kind of seems impenetrable, and that is the wide receiver room, where they only got 1 guy. And, if you're talking about the position that would be most hard to try to make the roster, how does an undrafted free agent make it? And what now is kind of one of the deepest positions on this roster. Luke Grimm is the receiver from Kansas who they ended up bringing in. He was Dane Brugler's 56th ranked receiver, and I think they ended up having a draftable grade on about 35 of them, but led Kansas in receptions and receiving yards last season. In total, 5 years, 2,472 yards, 14 yards per catch, and 23 touchdowns. That's nothing to sneeze at. I think he's a guy that's pretty much a slot-only guy, so maybe someone to spell Ladd McConkey at times during training camp and stuff like that. But, you're talking about a room, David, that now has Ladd McConkey, Quentin Johnston, Mike Williams, Trey Harris, KLS, right, Keandre Lambert-Smith, Darius Davis, and then you have the Jalen Ragers and the Brendan Rice as the 7 and 8 guys right now, not to mention Des Fitzpatrick, which is, I think, another reason why they only brought in 1 undrafted free agent, because they had him sign a futures contract earlier in the year. So that was something where, hey, That's 9 guys right there. And those 2 guys, Jalen Reagor and Brendan Rice, were both on the roster last year. So good luck kind of trying to take that spot from even, moving up, I guess, 4 spots on the depth chart.
This one is a kind of I'm going to my agent and I'm saying, why did you have me sign with the Chargers here? Like, look at all the bodies that are in this room. Look at like the depth chart. Like, they just drafted, 2 more wide receivers. Like, why do I feel like I have an opportunity here? But again, it's not always just about breaking the 53-man roster, right?
Yeah.
They do have, multiple spots available on that practice squad. So, hey, he's going to have some opportunities. He's going to have plenty of opportunities because, probably 3 or 4 of those or more of those top guys are probably not going to play very much at all in the preseason. So you're going to have your chance to be able to put your best film on tape and go try to win a job somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely. And it feels like every year the Chargers have a wide receiver that kind of balls out and can't make it. Whether, Michael Bandy ended up sticking around a little bit. I think last year was a Jalen Johnson who kind of had a wild preseason and made some big strides there. It'll be interesting. I think wide receiver specifically is going to be so competitive even before you get to the undrafted free agents, where it's like, I don't even think right now Brendan Rice or Jalen Reagor is going to be on the team. It's hard for me to imagine an undrafted free agent kind of getting there. So another kind of interesting couple of things. The Chargers only have 1 center and 1 guard in this undrafted free agent class. Thought that was a little interesting. They do have Bucky Williams, who's still around from last year, and they obviously just drafted a guard in Branson Taylor that'll be in the mix there. But also 1 quarterback, DJ Ungalale, who is Uyunglele. DJ Uyunglele. Just for all those out there who didn't get it the first time. I knew I was going to have to say that name. It's never going to get easy. Thankfully, we won't have to be saying it very long because it's another position that just feels impossible to make the team right now, especially after the addition of Trey Lance. But someone that, in his case, with an extra preseason game, will probably get some legitimate preseason snaps to try to go out there and show what he can do. So it'll be interesting to kind of peel back the layers of this undrafted free agent onion as the offseason continues, because Lord knows we're going to have some time to do it, David, before we start getting some real football activities. But thank you guys, as always, for checking this out today, making us your first listen. To make sure you never miss the show, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and listen wherever you get your podcast from, especially because tomorrow we're doing our draft grades. Of course, you got to do draft grades. You can't go the whole first week after the draft and not do draft grades. And of course, we have Fan Mail Friday on Friday coming up. So make sure you guys are following us on all of our social media as well, at Locked On OSC on Twitter, where we'll put a post out, at Locked On Chargers on Instagram, where we will put a post out. We'll also put a post out on YouTube. And you can also call into the voicemail line at 323-524-7924 and give us your 30-second Chargers voicemail. But tomorrow, make sure you guys are back here with 2025 draft grades, all 9 picks. But until then, guys, take it easy and go Bolts.